Hey guys, it's Etor. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to ask you something. What's your story? We all have one, and sometimes it takes the right space and a little guidance to bring that story to life. That's why I created the Ink and Authenticity Men's Creative Writing Workshop. It's a unique space for men to explore their identities, reflect on personal experiences, and use writing as a tool for self-discovery. Whether you're an experienced writer or have never written a word, this workshop is for you. Join me and other like-minded men on this journey. Visit authenticityroad.online/workshop to learn more. Thanks. And now on to today's episode.
Hello, all you beautiful humans. I hope you're enjoying life as you tune into this week's episode where we explore Reiki and energy healing. Maybe you've heard of it, or maybe you've even experienced working with a Reiki practitioner. Or maybe you have absolutely no idea what Reiki and energy work is. In today's episode, we are joined by Heather, a Reiki and energy practitioner, also owner of Universal Elements Healing and Wellness. Etor and I have both worked with Heather and are so excited to finally have her with us on the show to talk about the science behind and workings of energy healing. In full disclosure, I once was a skeptic about this woo-woo thing. But it only took one session with Heather to dissolve that skepticism and allow me to be a wholehearted advocate of energy work. So, what is Reiki and energy healing? How does it work? How does someone connect to and work with someone else's energy without even being in the same room? What's the experience of a practitioner during a session? How can energy work benefit you? Join us as we explore these questions and more with Heather on the Authenticity Road podcast.
Welcome to the Authenticity Road podcast.
We started this podcast to share our stories and hear from others about their adventures in men's work.
Join us on the journey to our fully authentic selves, emotional healing, and the meaning of modern masculinity.
Here on Authenticity Road. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Authenticity Road podcast. I am Jordan.
And I'm Etor.
And today we have a particular guest that I am personally very excited about. Heather from Universal Elements Healing is joining us today to talk a little bit about what she does, the science behind it, and how it can help you, how it has helped me. I'll get into that as well. But yeah, Heather, what do we, what do you want us to know about you?
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Heather, and I am the owner of Universal Elements Healing and Wellness, LLC, and I am a Reiki and energy practitioner. I came upon Reiki a few years ago when I was making some significant life changes, and immediately fell in love with the intensity with which I can sense energy. I've always been sensitive to energy and energy work, but based on past experiences, have kind of limited my knowledge and abilities up until a few years ago. So I currently live in the Midwest with my family and our 3 cats, and I work in the veterinary industry, so definitely a huge fan of animals. And I like to utilize my skills for both people and animals on their healing journey.
Fantastic. I think as I got to know more about the work you do, working with people for me obviously was a given, but I was really intrigued and excited that you work with animals too, so we'll definitely have to touch on that in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so for those that have never heard of Reiki before, I guess in your own words, what is it? When you speak of energy, what are you actually working with?
So when we're speaking about energy, we're actually working with universal energy as well as our own energetic bodies. And to get into a little bit of the science behind it, everything is energy. If we look at the scientific aspects of atoms, for example, atoms are made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons, which are made up of tiny, obviously, like you can't see an atom, so super tiny spinning vortices of energy. So therefore, everything that's matter, everything that we can touch, everything that we can feel, sense, it's all energy. And if you think about interactions with people, or when you go into a certain space and you get a certain sense about something, that's the energy that you're feeling in that space. If you get a certain vibe from an individual, your energy is interacting with their energy. So in Reiki, probably the easiest way to describe it is the practitioner is like a conduit. So if you want to utilize this analogy, if you think about power lines, they take energy from an energy plant and use the power lines, right? Like the power lines are the conduit that bring the energy into your home and turn on the lights. Okay. So I like to think about it like that. So a Reiki practitioner essentially channels universal energy through themselves, and then they utilize typically their hands, or in my case, and I can explain a little bit more about distance sessions as well, to channel that energy into the energetic body of somebody else to help clear their chakras and balance their overall energy of their aura. I do a lot of distance work, and when I do distance sessions, I typically envision myself going into my mental Reiki space. So I have a specific space that I go to almost in like a meditative state. And from that space, I invite the other individual's energy in. And when their energy presents, then I know I'm free to move forward with the session. And then from there, I typically, in my case, and for every practitioner, it's going to be different. Each of us kind of has our own way of intuitively feeling things or sensing things or knowing where to start, etc. And there are practical guidelines. If you take Reiki courses, like they teach you, this is how you do Reiki. However, most practitioners will then take that learning and apply it with their own intuition as well as other learning or energetic modalities, and kind of come up with their own modality, essentially, their own way of practicing energy healing. So in my mental Reiki space, when I invite that energetic body in, oftentimes I will feel in my own body where I need to start with that individual. So say, there's some things going on in the heart chakra, I'm going to feel that in my chest, and I'll know we need to start there. So that's kind of the general overview.
Well, if I may, can we take a step
absolutely.
backward? And you said that you can do it in person with touch, or you can do it remotely just by interacting with that person's energetic body. And I'm curious, is there a difference in efficacy or in the kinds of things that you can do when you are with someone in person versus when you are with them remotely?
It's a good question. I think it depends on the practitioner. I think each practitioner has their preference, and preferences play into efficacy in a lot of things. You can do the same things in person that you can do in a distance session. I will only speak from my own personal experience. For the first while in doing this work, I preferred distance sessions because then I'm not distracted by the physical that's going on around me. I'm the kind of person who, when there's that physical element to the situation, it's easy to be distracted. It's easy to be self-conscious. It's easy to kind of get lost in even in limiting ourselves by our own human abilities and what we're able to do in this 3D realm. So when I go into my mental Reiki space and I do a distance session, I'm not limited by any of that because it doesn't apply.
Right.
So for me, distance is easier. But I have done some very effective in-person sessions as well. And that's just been good for me to kind of get out of that headspace of being distracted by the physical.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ettore.
So, yeah, thanks. I'm not sure how well you know me or how much you know about me, but I am notoriously skeptical.
Yeah, I get it.
And so when you talk about this, there is a version of me where my bullshit detector starts going ding, 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 ding. Right?
Uh-huh.
So push the stop button on my bullshit detector.
Okay.
Give me some of the reasons why, if someone is listening and says, yeah, this is hooey, this is woo-woo,
Sure.
whatever. What would you say to them? How would you say, look, there's more to this than black magic?
Okay. Yeah. Also a valid point. As a former skeptic, I went into my first energy session thinking, all right, like this isn't going to be anything, but I'm going to go into it with an open mind. I'm going to see what happens. A friend of mine had purchased the session for me, so I was out nothing. Like if it was all woo woo and nothing, I was out not a dime. Just an hour of my time. When when the practitioner initially started working on me and I could feel that buzz of energy moving through my body, I was still wanting to be like, am I just is this my imagination playing tricks with me? Like, is something really going on here?
Right.
And then there were times throughout that session that I could feel pieces being, I don't know if that's the appropriate verbiage, but like things moving in parts of my body where the practitioner was on it. Like the practitioner was by my head and I could feel like a searing pain in my leg.
Wow.
With whatever she was clearing out, whatever was stuck in my body in that spot. And just, wow. Right. I mean, I barely knew what to do with that. And so it got me intrigued and I started digging into energy work a little bit. And I think number one, it's going to take some being open-minded, right? Like if you're not open-minded, you're not going to feel it because you're going to immediately shut out the ability to even connect with that energy. What I like to encourage people is to go in with an open mind and know that there are things that exist beyond what we can see with our eyes. And going back to some of those, like your gut feeling, your intuition, like it tells you things all the time if you're listening.
Yeah.
And so where does that come from? That comes from the energy around us. Like our body is in tune with that energy. So if I get a gut instinct about somebody or something doesn't feel right, and I listen to that, that is my own energy keeping me safe. So if you dial it back to something as simple as that, right, that we all have, we all know, then it can kind of help us be a little bit more open-minded as we move forward into something like this, where I'm going to start talking now about different things that I'm seeing and feeling within your energetic field, right? So if I tap into somebody and I feel, in the throat chakra area, so right over the throat, that there's tightness or like that, like something is stuck there, and I start clearing that out, and then they tell me I could feel that. It validates what I'm doing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
I don't know
in
if
full
that
disclosure,
completely killed the bullshit meter, but
yeah, no. I mean, look, in full disclosure for anyone listening, I have used Heather's services not just once but twice. So obviously, I believe in what she does, and I see a benefit from it. But I also know that we have a wide range of folks listening, and for some folks, this is going to sound like it's from out of left field, and that's why I bring it up.
oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I totally get it. I'm related to a lot of people who are a bit skeptical, and I mean, even myself, it's hard to wrap your mind around it until you experience it. And I think sometimes it's just being open to experiencing it first.
Yeah.
Yeah, that the situation you described, Heather, with your first experience having somebody practice, a Reiki healing session on you, reminds me of my first session. And mine was an in-person session, and I went in like, okay, I kind of did some reading on how it works, what's possible, kind of how they do it, what they do, and kind of the mentality where, okay, nothing's going to happen. The whole time I'm like waiting for something to pop up and prove that this is legit. And I had a hernia surgery. I don't remember when, but this was a couple years past, and I was having pain in that area. So that was, if I remember right, I think that's what kind of got me in, because I wanted, to see if that could kind of move some energy, clear what I was feeling in that area. Full disclosure, I never did. But as she was working, she was doing, with her hands moving around, just kind of communicating what was coming up for her. And it was at first very awkward for me. I'm like, oh shit, like what happens when her hands go over my genitals or something weird like this, But I remember she was on the right side of my body, and you mentioned the searing pain in your leg, and I felt that in my left heel. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, this doesn't make any sense with what's going on, where she is, any of this. But I could not deny what I was feeling and what was going on. And that was kind of the hook for me. And then, I too have asked you to do a couple of remote sessions on me. And so I've gotten to experience the in-person and the remote sessions. And it's wowing to me, honestly. Like what, you'll tell me when you start, when you finish, and then tell me what you find. And every piece of what you relay back to me, like 100% resonates with what's going on for me, what I'm feeling. And it's really hard for me to describe, other than I just feel soft and centered. Like there's this tension that I've been carrying that's now just gone. And it's, when you ask Gator to push the stop button on the bullshit meter, like, Heather, you can explain what you do, but I feel like you talk to anyone who was a skeptic and tried it, that's the stop button.
Yeah. And I'm going to tag on to that by saying that I have not had the physical experience. I have not had I feel a change here or a pain there or anything like that. I haven't had or warmth or tingling or any of those sensations that people will often talk about when they talk about, I had a Reiki session and I felt X. So I've never experienced that. But I do know that because all of my experiences with you, or both of my experiences with you, have been remote, that when you write me the report afterwards of what you encountered in your room, in your, I think you call it, or your space, whatever you called your sort of place where you work, right?
Yeah.
That the things you encountered there were all things that resonated with me, either images or there were a couple of animals who showed up. There were people who showed up, things like that. And so those things all resonated with me. And so it was never that physical experience, but I am keeping an open mind and hopeful that the next time I do this, I'll get that physical experience.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, it's Ator again. Sorry to interrupt the show, but I want to tell you about something I'm really excited about. If you've been listening for a while, you know how important it is to take time for self-reflection and growth. That's exactly why I've created the Ink and Authenticity Men's Creative Writing Workshop. This is a 6-session online workshop designed specifically for men. Whether you're looking to explore your identity, challenge societal expectations, or simply find a creative outlet to process your life, this workshop gives you the space to do that. It's not about being a professional writer. It's about telling your story, digging deep, and connecting with others on the same journey. Each session is filled with prompts and discussions that will help you understand yourself better, all in a supportive and open environment. So if you want a way to write, reflect, and share, join me for Ink and Authenticity. Just visit authenticityroad.online/workshop to learn more and register. Now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I think for some people, they may not get that physical experience, but they could feel, more balanced or more centered, like Jordan was mentioning, without necessarily, having the buzzing and the tingling and the, pain or physical releases from anywhere. And I think it varies based on the individual. And, so to set the precedence, it's not going to be the same for everybody. Everybody's experience is going to be different. I would just encourage people to give it a try. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, great. There are a ton of other things out there. But, for me personally, Reiki and energy healing modalities have been a game changer, even just for my own healing journey. And so to be able to share that with other people has been truly rewarding. It's one of the most rewarding things that I have done thus far.
Yeah. And I feel like, Ator, I'm sure you can echo this with the men that we work with. But I feel like all humans in general have a distinct ability to be able to shut out and block things that are uncomfortable, right?
Oh, of course.
And so energy work and what that can open for somebody, what's behind that door might be, your body picks up on before your brain ever does. And it might be painful, uncomfortable, triggering of something from the past. And so, what's the worst that could happen in a Reiki session? I'm guessing nothing, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No one's ever, unless you fall off the table, right? Fall out of your chair.
That's true. Start strapping people down or something.
But otherwise, the worst that could happen is nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that is also beneficial, right? There are no negative side effects. Nothing could happen, or you may get some insights into some of the things that you've been thinking or feeling or, needing to work on through your own healing. One of the things I like to clarify too is, energy healers such as myself don't heal other people, right? We can channel energy into the space that needs healing and open that up and get the energy flowing in the manner in which it needs to, but ultimately that journey is up to the person who is seeking healing, right? Everybody's individual healing journey is their own responsibility. We're just here to help channel that energy in the right direction.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Before we began recording, Heather, you and I were talking, we sort of touched on this, and I said, well, let's save it for the show. Sure. But that is, when you first discovered Reiki, how you became a practitioner, and how long you've been doing it professionally. So the interesting thing that you touched on, and hopefully you can touch on that entire arc, but the thing in the center was really fascinating to me, and that was the training that you had to undergo. to get there, because you just don't wake up one morning and just declare to the world, I am a Reiki. Come see me and I will do energy work with you.
Right.
That there is a process to this. So I was wondering if you could talk about that process.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So after that initial session that I had mentioned,
And that was like a 2018-ish?
2018-ish. Yep.
Yeah.
So right around that time, I began looking into how do I learn Reiki? How do I learn any of these energy healing modalities? And there are plenty of online courses, there are plenty of in-person courses, and I really think it's kind of up to the individual what works best for them. And there may be plenty of people who disagree with me on that, and that's okay too. I ended up taking an online course, very detailed videos, showing you exactly like each hand placement, the Reiki symbols that are involved, etc. And I started that in 2018, and I got through my Reiki level 1 and my Reiki level 2. And then I ended up finishing my Reiki master level in 2020 during the shutdown. I had set it aside for a little bit because my career had taken a shift. So I picked that back up in 2020 and finished my master session. And then I have also received attunements, which are part of the whole process. The person from whom you learn is a master, and then they attune you with energy so that you can then begin practicing. You can still do Reiki without the attunement, but that just sort of heightens the whole experience. Again, back to being a skeptic, I had a distance attunement. So I was like, okay, all right, how is this going to work? Are we for real right now? And so I had it scheduled for a certain time in the evening when I knew I could like just be quiet and whatever. And again, like the energy coming through, and I could and again, I'm sensitive to that, and that's how my body receives it. So like I could just feel it buzzing and moving and shifting throughout my whole body. And like, all right, I guess we're doing this. So that's kind of the learning process that I took through it. I have taken other courses, and I have become familiar with other practitioners, and I have had an in-person attunement as well, just because somebody offered. They were wondering, if I ever wanted to, just have that additional attunement. And I was like, sure, why not? Let's do it. I love all things energy, right? So, so that's kind of been the process. It sort of found me, like I said, during a significant shift in my experience, and it has been amazing just to continue on the learning journey and, see where it takes me. And now I started my official business back in January of 2023 this year. And I've kind of just been taking it slow, a session here and there, nothing too extravagant. However, I have been feeling a little bit of a nudge to, the universe is pushing me a little bit right now. So when the universe pushes, sometimes you don't have a choice but to move.
Well, and you're here. So,
and I'm here.
More people will hear your story. And of course, they can visit your website, which we will put a link to in the show notes.
Fantastic.
But it's
UniversalElementsHealing.com.
UniversalElementsHealing.com, right?
Yep.
All one word, UniversalElementsHealing.com. Jordan?
Yeah, I'm curious, being a practitioner and just knowing how well you're able to feel and just take in the energy around you. What is it like for you personally? When you enter your Reiki space and you're inviting another person's energy, that transition, and then when you complete a session, what's it like for you to, I don't want to shed light on kind of what I know happens, but how do you break that connection and go back to you and leave that person go back to them?
Sure. So when I enter initially, prior to entering my mental Reiki space, I not only make sure that I myself am grounded, but I also cleanse the space in which I'm sitting. So I don't know if everyone's familiar with energetic cleansing, but typically you use sage, Palo Santo, some other type of, preferably your own grown herbs, or sound clearing. I've been using a lot of sound clearing just because I like the vibration and appreciate the energetic clearing that sound provides. So I do all of that before I even begin. And then when I am in that meditative state, after I'm grounded and ready to start, and I enter into my mental Reiki space, and I would describe it all for you, but it would, like I'm like picturing it in my brain right now. Let's just say there are trees and beautiful woods and like a little light-filled situation. But when I get into that space, I invite the other individual's energy in through the door, essentially. And then I wait to see. Typically, because whoever I'm working with knows that I'm going to be working with them, they're ready. And that energetic body comes through right away. And then, we get into the session. I do some clearing. I utilize the elements, hence universal elements, dependent on what intuitively feels right in that session. And then when I end a session, after everything, is cleared and balanced, up until it intuitively feels right to end the session, I call my own energy back to, like, I verbally in my head, I guess, like mindfully call my own energy back, send their energy back to them. And then I do like clapping of my hands or something to kind of just break that cycle. And then it is encouraged in any kind of energy healing just to go wash your hands when you're done, just to kind of clear out that energy. Water is a good cleanser, obviously, to kind of just break that energetic tie as well.
Cool.
It's fantastic.
So what are the things that Reiki is good for?
Reiki is good for stress relief, relaxation, kind of overall health and well-being. We obviously can't make any claims to, curing anything or treating anything. It's always recommended that you speak with your healthcare provider. But it is a good supplement to Western medicine, particularly for that stress relief and relaxation piece. A lot of people benefit from it in that way.
What are the things that it's not good for? What would I feel and what might want to reach out to you for, and you would push back and say, this Reiki is really not a good match for that?
I would say, personally, I would push back in the event of a significant mental health crisis or, any other type of significant illness, because Reiki is not going to fix that. Like, Reiki can supplement that. However, like, those types of things definitely need to be handled by, a licensed healthcare provider.
Yeah.
What if I were to hypothetically have some kind of a goal? If there's something that I'm feeling into regarding myself that I'm wanting to control the outcome. It doesn't feel right, but I really want a certain something to help happen. And I reach out to you and ask you to help put something in play, move something to make what I want to happen?
Oh.
Someone doesn't like this question.
I was like, oh, Jordan. I would have to, oh boy, we'd have to have a conversation about control, for one. Like, there are certain things that it is against our benefit to be attempting to control the outcome. And I know that there are certain things we may want in life that, we want to control the outcome of and make things turn out how we want it to turn out. There are always bigger things at play, in my opinion. And Reiki is not going to make that happen. Reiki is utilized for the highest good of the individual and the overall universe, or like the overall well-being of all. So if trying to control that outcome is not in the best interest of all things, it's not going to happen. I mean, Reiki is not going to be a benefit there.
Jordan, that sounded to me like you had something specific in mind.
He's going to be calling me later.
Yeah. No, it was just a hypothetical that popped. Like, I could see somebody in some sort of situation where they, what I'm doing is not getting me where I want to go. Maybe this can help me get to where I want to go. And so figured I'd give that a little voice.
Perfect. Got it. Yeah, no, I just don't think, I don't think that's how the universe operates. So,
Right.
And Reiki is in alignment with universal energy. So we can only control so much.
When it comes to energy, so you have essentially practiced and trained to sensitize yourself to energy, so that you can be a better, clearer reader of energy and welcome it in. And I'm curious, do you ever find, so it's kind of a two-part question. One part is, are you able to turn it off and on, the reception, your radio, whatever you want to call it? Are you able to turn it off and on at will, or is it once you're sensitized to it, you're just very sensitized? And sort of the next part of that question is, so when you're very sensitive to energy, do you walk into a room and just go, holy crap, the energy in here is just bombarding me. I got to get out of here. Or I've got to turn down the volume, or whatever.
All right. I might give you a two-part non-answer.
Fair enough, I guess.
So I have always been sensitive to energy, and it's not something that I was aware of until I started doing energy work. And yes, I can walk into a room and sense the energy of the room. There are times when I'm better about having boundaries around that sensitivity, and that takes a conscious effort to put up kind of that energetic shield around myself, because I don't want to take on everybody's energy all the time. I don't want to be affected by everybody's energy all the time, particularly negative energy, which our brains are automatically programmed to operate in. So, so yes, I can control it to a certain degree. I'm learning. I'm learning to be better about creating those boundaries. Because there are definitely times when I can walk into a space and immediately want to turn around and walk back out, because the energy is just not something that I want to deal with. It's not something I want to surround myself with. But learning to have that boundary, and also learning to bring my energy with me, right? Like we can influence the energy in the room at times if we're willing to stand in our power when it seems relevant.
What made you think that was a non-answer? That was a perfectly acceptable answer.
Yeah. Do you remember that whole like conversation we had before this? Something about imposter syndrome.
Something about imposter syndrome. Something about how I wrote the book.
Yes, and we were going to co-author. You remember?
Right, and then we won't publish it because we're imposters.
Exactly.
Yeah. No. I remember. Can anyone? So you said you've always been sensitive to energy. Can anyone learn to do this? So supposing you are a person who has never been sensitive to energy, can you work to sensitize yourself, or is this really a gift?
I believe that there are certain people who are gifted, if that's the word we're going to use.
Why not?
In sensing energy and being more intuitive that way. As there are people who are more gifted in, strategy and mathematics and things. However, I do believe that anybody can learn how to work with energy. Because we all are energy. So it's really a matter of being able to tap into that. And I think it can be learned. It's going to be a little bit easier for somebody who maybe is already in tune with energy and a bit more sensitive to it. But it's definitely not impossible for somebody to learn it.
Yeah. Maybe not necessarily for the sake of becoming a practitioner, but just learning how my energy interacts with energy around me and how to kind of, like you said, you put up boundaries with what you feel that doesn't resonate with you, how to stand in my power when I enter a room and bring my energy, healthy energy. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I have animals on the mind, and there's two trains of thought with it. One, in the couple of sessions that I have done with you, some spirit animals have presented themselves, and that was a first for me. And in doing reading, research with what came out of the session was very mind-opening for me as far as how well it resonated and as far as the discomfort of how true some of it was. So what can you tell me about the significance that spirit animals play outside of, like, in a session, outside of what I can physically feel, whether it's physical sensations or I feel more balanced, but it feels like there's almost another layer of either connecting to a world before me or something historic that's in play that's still affecting me.
You're going to take me down a rabbit hole?
Yes. Hopefully.
So, again, encompassing energy healing as a whole, because not all of this ties specific to Reiki training, okay? Some of this is intuitive ability and what comes through when I'm doing a session. My personal feeling and interactions with animal spirits when they come through in a session is that there's a message. There's a message to be had for the recipient. And I don't always know what that message is. I don't always have insight into that. And sometimes I hesitate to share because I know it makes me sound maybe a little less stable when I'm like, oh, and then I saw a squirrel.
Right.
So I'm well aware of this, and I'm well aware. Turns out I'm fairly stable. But when the
just
animals,
fairly, okay.
yeah, just fairly. I mean, we don't want to go all the way to 100% here. When animals come through, I try to share that with whoever I'm working with, depending on their comfort level. Like I typically ask, how comfortable are you with me sharing whatever I see or whatever I feel or whatever comes through? Because some people are not going to be comfortable with that, right? Like they don't want to know. They just want to have the session and be done with it. Animal spirits give us messages that can help us on our journey. And I have always had a connection with animals anyway, so I think it's awesome when I see stuff come through. And then I'm always curious, like, oh my gosh, I wonder what that means for, Jordan, if I'm working with Jordan, right? I wonder what message that has. And I try to let the people look those things up on their own, just because what I might find or think resonates may not be what actually resonates with them or the message that they need. If I get a specific message, like if there's really a strong feeling that comes through, and that's how a lot of like messages, if you will, come through is feelings. If I get a really strong feeling about something, I'll share that. But if it's kind of like, all right, there was a swan there for a minute, not sure what that means, maybe look it up, see if it resonates with you and how you're feeling, or like something that you need to know or hear. And I kind of leave it there. So typically messengers is how I've interacted with animal spirits.
Yeah. So if you see me walking around with all kinds of animals tattooed on me, you know why now.
Right. I may or may not have a few of those myself.
I was trying to find the report from the first session we did together, and I can't locate it on my computer. I don't know what I've done with it, unfortunately. But I believe that the first animal that showed up for me was a fox, which I'm pretty sure it was a fox, which, when I looked it up, had to do with spiritual awakenings and increased intuition, which was interesting because at that time, that was what I was working on. I was working on spiritual awakening and increasing my intuition. And so the fact that a fox had shown up was just a really cool thing.
There's your button.
First going to keep pushing that button.
there's that button.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no. If you have something to add, go ahead. Because I was going to go in a different direction now, but I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I just, so I have a friend, we are very opposite in how we think. Like she's very logical, and I'm logical to a certain degree, but I love all the I'm all about otherworldly thing. We want to talk about unicorns. I'm going to talk about unicorns. So we're opposite that way. And it's been amazing because she's been one of my biggest supporters. She's seen what I can do, experienced what I can do. And the first time I had to tell her that animal spirits came through, I was like, she is going to have me put away. And it was fascinating because same thing. It resonated with her, and it's just been amazing to see that happen, even with some of my people who are a bit more skeptical or aren't sure what to even think about what I'm doing. Right. So I don't know, just brings me joy when I hear that these things resonate and that the things that I'm seeing and that are coming through in those sessions are really tying it all together.
As long as we're on the topic of animals, I'm curious. You said, I believe, that you work in the veterinary space.
I do.
As your primary source of
That
career.
is correct.
I am curious if you make Reiki connections with animals that you meet in the course of your job.
I have. I don't actively practice in my clinic, but there have been times when it has been very evident the need for some Reiki to come through, or some of that healing energy to come through, even if it's to assist an animal in transitioning from this world into the next. There have been moments where all of a sudden my hands are just on fire. And I have cold hands. I am cold-blooded by nature. I am freezing all the time. I'm still wearing my vest and I'm inside. But my hands were just on fire, and I just knew, I just intuitively knew I needed to stay with that pet until they transitioned. It was not even... And there have been other times when I will feel things in my body and I'll ask a question because it hasn't been up until I recently posted publicly on my Facebook page that I do this, that I would share this with my teammates. But there have been times when I'll feel something, as we're looking at a patient, trying to figure out what's going on with the various symptoms, and we're doing all the diagnostics and things. And I'll ask a question is it possible that such and such could affect the liver? Because I'm feeling it in my liver space.
Right.
And sometimes I may or may not get a look of where did she come up with that?
You know?
She doesn't even, she doesn't even have a medical background. What? And it's just interesting because, in that moment, right? That's the information I needed to know. And so, yes, it does come through sometimes in my current occupation, but it's not something I actively practice on a daily basis.
You said something earlier that has been gnawing at me ever since you said it.
Oh boy.
And so, Jordan, I apologize. I stepped on you because it was your turn for a question, but this has been gnawing at me. We are automatically programmed to operate in negative energy, you said.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know why you say that and why you think that is.
Okay. So I can't cite articles or resources at the moment, but we recently took a course in my occupation about how the brain is naturally programmed. And in this course, and again, I wish I had the information in front of me so I could actually cite the resources, but in this course, it was discussed that the human brain is wired for negativity. And the thought process behind that is we are wired from a very primal survivalist condition. And it's really hard to overcome that negative mind program, because that's what kept us safe. That's what kept us alive. We were always, way back when, we were always looking for food. We were always, fearful for what could potentially wipe us out, etc. And so we're naturally programmed to have that kind of survivalist negative mindset. So to reprogram that takes conscious work to be able to move past that negative programming.
Yeah, good answer.
Yeah, well, I was trying to remember some of the rest of the things, but if we stop and think about it, I don't know how many people y'all interact with on a daily basis, but it is interesting just through pure observation how quickly our brain, observing my own mind, observing, reactions of those around me, how quickly we jump to the negative. We automatically assume negative versus positive. And so when I say that we're programmed to be in that natural negative energy, that's kind of what I mean. Like it's just something that's evident in society and even in our own brains at times.
Yeah. Thanks for expanding on that, because you dropped it so casually. And,
just a little detail here. Like, no
and
worries.
I was not going to let it pass without excavating a bit.
Fair enough.
What is, and because you're more than just a Reiki practitioner, you can answer this as Heather, the Reiki practitioner, or as just Heather. What is the link in your mind between what you were just talking about and anxiety?
I mean, I think in my opinion, the link is very obvious. I mean, if we're programmed in our brains to naturally be negative and fearful and all of those things that kind of accompany that. And when I say negative, like, I don't want to insinuate that like all fear, anger, negative emotion is like negative in the aspect that like we can't feel it and we can't, because we should. That's part of the human experience, but it's not living in that space. But being programmed that way, I mean, I feel like it just makes us naturally prone to things like anxiety and depression, because if we're programmed to automatically jump to the negative consequence or the negative side effect of something or the negative outcome of something, that in and of itself creates anxiety. I mean, I could feel myself like, oh, I don't like any of that. And having dealt with both anxiety and depression myself, in my experience, it very much is connected to negative thinking and kind of embracing that negative survival mindset, if you will. And it's for me, in my own experience, it hasn't been until I've been able to step outside of survival mode, which I've lived in for a good portion of my experience, that I've been able to overcome. And not that I don't ever have, anxiety or feel depression or have any of those negative emotions, but be able to take that, sit with it, and then move forward in a healthy manner versus, spiraling down into a place that is then hard to come back from.
Yeah. Well, that's a good answer. There's a lot of anxiety in my own life, some of it mine, some of it with people that I am close to. And, just speaking from my own personal experience, there's times where I will feel anxious and I have no idea why. And I have reached out on some of those instances, like, Heather, work your magic. Like, I'm feeling something. I don't know what's going on. But, like, that's just a testament to, the power behind what you're doing. Is there's, that primal part of my mind is just always looking for threats. And it's picking up on way more than I'm conscious of, right?
Yeah.
And, like, all of that tension, that clutter, you have, in my experience, like, dissolve that. And then now that I'm past that, I can with more clarity, understand what's actually going on, what I'm carrying, what I'm dealing with, and how to go, process it and move forward.
Yeah, 100%. And I appreciate the insight into being able to assist with that as well. To that point, And, there are plenty of articles and research that's been done on this, but we store trauma and feelings and emotion in various parts of our body. And if we're not willing to, sometimes we're not even aware, right, that we need to. Like all of a sudden it's there and you're like, oh my goodness, what is this? And in those moments, if we're able to seek assistance in helping clear some of that out and balance some of that, like some of it's, things we've been carrying for far longer than we're even aware we were carrying it. Could be from our childhood, could be from, our adolescence, whatever. And it sits in there until we release it. And I think sometimes, in my experience, it comes up at the most inopportune times. But being willing yes, but being willing to work through some of that, not only through psychotherapy and things like that, but energy healing can assist in that as well, and just clearing out some of that stagnant energy that's sitting there and it's not beneficial, or maybe we don't even know that what it is that's sitting there until we start digging into it a little bit deeper and we get some of that insight that says, wait a minute, okay, that makes sense and that's tied to that feeling. And now, okay, I can sit with that and I can release that.
Yeah.
And that, I believe, ties into the next question that I was about to ask, and that is, how does Reiki help me live my most authentic life?
Well, I would say that going back to what we were just talking about, it can help us clear out some of those things that prevent us or hold us back from living our most authentic life. I mean, even things like imposter syndrome that we were discussing before we started recording.
Yeah.
All of those feelings, they're tied to our inner belief system. And Reiki can help us figure out where those beliefs are sitting and what is the belief that's holding me back in this situation, or what is the belief that's holding me back from taking this step forward in my life, or what is the belief that's just making me feel like this? And that can kind of give us some insight into what that is and help clear it out so that we can then feel a little bit less heavy and a little bit more free to be who we truly are.
Beautiful. You historically have worked primarily with women.
That is true.
As you probably know, most of our audience is men. And you have worked with men. You've worked with Jordan. You've worked with me. I have sort of another one of my two-part questions.
Sure.
Part one of the question is, how is working with women different than working with men? And part two is, when a man comes to you and says, will you work with me? How do you decide to say yes or no?
All right. A little Mars versus Venus here.
A little Mars and Venus action going on here. Yeah.
Boy, I could get myself in trouble on this one. Okay, speaking from my own experience, women are, so there was, backing up a little bit, there was a reason I was mainly working with women, and that was more to do with my comfort level and in person, because I don't have a space right now. And so like just being cognizant of different things. So I'm moving into working with a greater audience of people, and working with men versus working with women, as you guys have discussed in some of your conversations and the work that you do, our society has not been open as much to men, number one, seeking help for themselves or acknowledging that they need help or, doing any of the things that, allow them to be the free thinking, feeling, loving, sensitive, any of those things have just not been widely accepted for men. And by proxy, it makes the range of women that I work with who are typically in our society allowed to be feeling, thinking, sensitive, emotional beings. It just makes that audience larger for somebody doing work that is essentially going to be working with that energy of emotion. Probably not answering this in the clearest manner, but
you are answering it just fine.
But if a man does come to me as such, looking to work with me, it's something that I'm definitely open to now. Particularly, I do most of my distance, or do most of my sessions from a distance. And
right. So physical safety.
Physical safety is a thing. I have some trauma in my background that makes that a very realistic concern of mine.
Right. But I mean, when you're working remote, then physical safety
it's not a thing. Not a thing.
Yeah, not a thing.
Yep.
Is there a difference in the energy and sort of the energetic experience for you?
Not that I've noticed. And if I'm being really honest about it, gender doesn't matter when you're working with energy. And I think that's probably one of the most fascinating things that I'm even just realizing as I'm saying it out loud. Like it really doesn't matter. I
kind of love that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm like, whoa, light bulb. Because when I think back to, sessions I've done with both of you and sessions that I've done with, the various women that I work with, there really isn't a difference in the energy. When somebody truly shows up ready for that session, it's all about the energetic body. Like gender goes away, all the physical attributes, aspects, that all goes away. It's irrelevant.
Wow.
Oh.
Great answer. Thank you. I obviously I didn't know what you were going to say, but if I had to imagine what you were going to say.
This isn't scripted?
Right. It's not scripted.
Wait a second.
But if I had to imagine what you were going to say, I thought you were going to tell me that, there was this vast gulf between the energy that you experience between men and women. And so I really love the fact that it's kind of all the same. That actually gives me sort of hope and optimism when I hear that.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's fascinating as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's as big of a line that divides masculine and feminine as we're led to believe, honestly.
I would agree. I would definitely agree with that.
Well, not even just led to believe, but also trained to enact.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Now it's my turn to go back.
Oh boy.
Because there's the other part of the animal thing that was on my brain.
Okay.
When you work with animals, how is that different to you than working with people? I don't imagine a dog can reflect back to you how the session was.
That is true.
So, in most cases, I would think.
Although if they do
Well,
start
not in
speaking
human
to me,
language, right?
my experience with humans in doing actual sessions is a bit more honed in than my experience with animals has been, just because I've had more practice with people. However, I would say probably the biggest difference is the fact that they really can't verbalize to me what they felt, and what I feel with animals. Their spirit, their energy is different than humans, and I don't really know how to describe that. But even, as I envision some of the animals that I've worked with in my mental Reiki space, it's more about creating that safe space for their energy to come in and show me what needs. Not that I don't do that with people too, but it's important to animals to have that safe space to come into. And then I feel the physical things in the body, like I mentioned the liver earlier, but, and then sometimes it's just a matter of like digging into what that physical feeling is actually about. And I do the same thing with humans, but with animals, I don't get the rest of the, maybe like the people that I see or the animal spirits that come in or whatever. Like it typically, in my experience so far, and like I said, it's been fairly limited. I don't get a lot of those other things. And it potentially could just be because I can't then relay that back to the animal that I'm working with and say, oh, well, a fox showed up, so you need to, like, it doesn't work like that. There is that communication. I don't want to say barrier, but for lack of a better word, coming to my mind at the moment. And it feels different working with an animal. And I like I said, I don't really know how to explain that in words that make sense. They have different energy, and yeah, I don't really have the words for that.
Would it be fair to say, like, if I suddenly lost my vision, my other senses are then heightened to kind of make up for what my vision gave me? Does it kind of feel along the line of that, where you can't communicate verbally with an animal as you would a human, and that the felt energy is that much stronger or more important?
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. So thank you for providing the words that I didn't have.
Okay. Well, I'm on the same page as you now.
Okay, perfect.
Well, I can see by the clock on the wall that our time together is coming to a close. But before we let you go, we have two questions that we like to ask every guest. And question number one is, what does the word authenticity mean to you?
Okay. Authenticity to me means being able to not only accept who you are in the purest form, both the light and the dark, and then being able to be that person in the best version of yourself as you come forward and interact with others, or as you show up in the world.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, yeah.
Question two is, what question do you wish that we had asked you that we didn't?
Oh, goodness.
Or another way of thinking about it is, if there is something that you could say that you haven't had an opportunity to say yet, what would it be? What do we need to know? Because Jordan and I don't know what we don't know, right? What do you know that we don't, that we should have talked about?
Oh boy. Is it a trick question? Because
It's not. It's actually...
like, do people actually answer this one?
It's actually a softball question because it's your opportunity to get what you need.
Yeah. Boy, I don't know. I'm still sitting in imposter syndrome over here. Like, are we really talking about me right now?
Yes, we really
maybe
are.
like we've finally done it and we've completely interviewed our first guest.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
No,
I think there's a ton of stuff that she knows that we don't know, that I'm trying to get at still.
Oh boy. Oh gosh. I guess if I had anything to say, it would be just to recognize that we are a tiny speck of dust on a teeny tiny little ball spinning in the universe. And there's so much that we don't know, that to close our minds to new ideas and new things and new possibilities limits what we're able to experience in this life. So if I have encouragement or anything that I would say to anybody, is just keep an open mind, because there's so much that we don't know, and there's so much we have yet to experience if we're just open.
Yes, I agree with that 1,000%.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't have any questions. Like, oh boy, nobody told me there's going to be a trick question at the end.
Well, at least you didn't say, where are you sending the suitcase full of 20s? Or something like that.
True. Wait, there's a suitcase full of 20s?
Well, not now. There's
Somewhere, I'm sure.
Jordan didn't tell me about that.
We always bring that up at the end, so you don't
Got
have
it.
a choice.
Fantastic.
Yeah, if you'd said the secret word, we would have
Yeah,
shipped it to you.
there it would have been.
Well, we have one individual that comes to mind that I know would be upset if we didn't close it out a certain way. And I hesitate to step on your toes, Ator.
No,
So
Jordan, I want to hear you do my closing.
it just doesn't feel right. Well, you already hit the clock on the wall.
Yeah.
So I will say with that, it's time to take the bags and throw them into the back of the old jalopy and get back out on the authenticity road and see where it takes us next. I'll throw my own little twist on it.
I love it. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you for taking a risk and showing up. This has been exciting. I'm excited both knowing your journey and also as someone who has experienced working with you that this is getting out there more.
Thank
So
you.
Kudos to you.
And Heather,
Yeah.
I want to express my extreme, extreme gratitude for you coming and sitting with us and being open and being a good sport and, generally sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. We are very, very appreciative. And as I said earlier in the show, your link to Universal Elements Healing will be in the show notes, and that folks can reach you there, and folks should reach you there. I'm hoping that we will have piqued some interest with what we've done here today.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. It has truly been my privilege to be here.
All right. Well, until next
Well,
time,
Yeah.
All right.
go ahead, Jordan. You do it.
Be authentic. Until
Yeah.
next time, be authentic.
Fantastic.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope what you've heard will help you on the road to your personal authenticity.
Visit us at www.authenticityroad.online.